Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Chris Donnell. I'm the Director of Audit and Support Services here at Alltranstech. Today, welcome to the Alltranstech webinar series. The topic today is Railcar Fleet Management. Our presenters today are Allison Burnaby and Jay Kraska. Allison is an integral part of Alltranstech's growth. She works closely to help all customer needs and assists with streamlining access to inspection, engineering, report development, regulatory, and engineering support. She specializes in new customer onboarding, interpretation of customer requirements, system setup, internal employee training, and process flow. And then Jay Kraska, the Director of Fleet Management. Jay has been with Alltranstech for over a decade and heads up the fleet management division of the company. As the company exercises a culture of continuous improvement, Jay's vision, insight, and connection with our clients continue to be invaluable as we strive for ongoing evolution in our products and services. So then, before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. The presentation is going to be approximately 45 minutes long to allow for about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. Please make sure to type in any questions you have in the question pane of the GoToWebinar display on the right hand of your screen. We will hold all questions until the end of the presentation. So without further ado, Allison, Jay, please take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Again, hello, everybody. My name is Allison Burnaby, and I have been with Alltranstech for over 25 years. During my career, I've held numerous positions within fleet management. With me today is Jay Kraska, who currently holds the position of Director of Fleet Management. Jay, as Chris mentioned, Jay and I are going to go through this slide presentation, and we will reserve time at the end of this to take any of your questions. So let's begin. Just a quick overview of who Alltranstech is. Alltranstech is one of North America's largest railcar management and consulting companies. We manage over 275,000 railcars, over 200 customers, some of those making up the largest privately owned fleets. Our technical service group provides a full range of technical and operational support to the rail equipment supply chain. Those services include field inspections, engineering, regulatory compliance, non-destructive testing, training. The majority of rail cars under contract are covered hopper and tank. Tank cars requiring the most attention, followed by hopper. So let's begin. This will be an overview of fleet management. The majority of this presentation will be at a high-level overview, trying to cover the majority of items which a company will need to consider if choosing to jump into rail. Your company has decided to ship by rail. Some of your considerations. Do you want to own net lease cars, or do you want a full service lease from a lessor? No matter which one you choose, we highly recommend inspecting those rail cars. These inspections can take place at builder, in the field, storage, or in a shop. During the inspection, it is extremely important to pay close attention to the coating lining that are in the rail car. This is extremely important for both product and railcar protection. If you do choose to build, consider hiring an expert to assist with your railcar design and specifications. The next step is probably setting up RailLink. RailLink is the intermediary which allows your railcars to move through interchange. As the owner or lessee of railcars, you will need to ensure that the various modules and permissions are set up. This is all handled via RailLink's website. The first thing is probably an acquisition of a owned mark or a company ID. As an example, Alltranstech does not own any railcars. Therefore, we have registered and been assigned a company ID. You're going to need to fill out an interchange agreement online and a Rule 88C. You're going to need to submit a letter of authorization. This letter of authorization will control who is allowed to do what on behalf of your rail cars and company. Find us rail registration. This is basically a replacement of the old, I used to call it Big Yellow Book, or ORER. No, you do not have to be published. You have to be published in Find Us, but you do not have to be published in ORER. There are fees for each that you need to be aware of. Find Us will allow for searching of your own car initials or company ID, provide full contact details to assist outside companies trying to contact you for certain services. Basically, who has what responsibilities as they pertain to Railink access. UMLR. UMLR is the source of critical data pertaining to your rail cars. The UMLR system provides secure access for equipment management and reporting. It identifies internal and external dimensions, capacity, weight information. Railroads, equipment owners, agents, shippers, ports, suppliers, industry consultants, government agencies, and railcar service providers use UMLR for the safe and efficient replacement, movement, and interchange of railcars. Next is OT57. This was OT5 a couple of years ago. For the majority of you people who have probably been in rail for a while, I'm sure we can all agree that OT5 was horrible. There was a consortium effort to enhance the OT57 and enhance OT5, and OT57 was the result of that. OT57 is a much easier tool to utilize and stay on top of. That said, you must register all of your rail cars timely. If a rail car moves through interchange and is not registered in OT57, you may be subject to penalties. You need to think about freight rate analysis and negotiation. Build the right fleet. Talk to the railroad and determine where your rail cars are moving, what they are moving, and determine the best routes and rates for your fleet. Fleet size analysis and forecasting. How big will your fleet need to be? What is your product? These considerations, obtaining and utilizing the correct rail car size, will ultimately ensure you save some money. Things to think about. Do you have a system which will allow you to organize your rail cars? As simple as a car list and as complicated as collection of car movements, mechanical specs, test certificates, planned maintenance programs, repair history, mileage history, in-service and out-of-service date. You need to think about auditing and payment of various invoices. I will be speaking about these subjects in more granular detail as we move through the remainder of the presentation. How will you organize and execute maintenance events for your rail cars? Think about coordination of rail cars to and from shops, on-site maintenance facilities, and of course, coordination of mobile repair events. Approving estimates, payment of invoices, shop, mobile, lessee rebuttal damaged events, railroad repair, pre- and post-auditing of these events, as well as identifying cost reductions and trends. Some of the complexities to consider: handling warranty claims, railroad damage events, maintenance facility performance, reporting and data mining. What we are really seeing over the last decade, especially, is that business intelligence in the early 2000s was kind of a flashy item, but really didn't become a mainstay for everybody. But now it has. A lot of us have in our companies different analytical platforms. Whichever platforms your company utilizes, you must make sure that the data you are collecting has the ability to be fed into your systems in a manner which you can report upon to assist when making decisions, budgeting, and to justify how you are handling your railcar fleet. Car owners and shippers will need to develop and maintain based upon current industry standards, maintenance and qualification procedures. And each time a railcar is shopped, distribute to repairing parties. What should be done during the maintenance event? How should it be completed? And ensuring that prior inspection and test forms are completed accurately and in a manner which your company can absorb into a system for later reporting and analysis. Railcar specification development. What is your product in your railcar? What O-rings, gaskets, coatings are chemically compatible? Are there considerations that need to be considered pertaining to loading and unloading racks? Certain sizes, types of components to utilize and assist with these functions? Are there specific components necessary to the product? Data, maintenance data collection. How are you going to collect this data? Reliability. You have collected all of the data. Now, how will you utilize it to predict when components will fail, when replacement is necessary, and of course, support your inspection intervals to the FRA? When choosing a maintenance facility to perform repair work and or qualification testing of your rail cars, you must ensure that the shop and its employees are certified and trained to perform the work that you are contracting them for. Examples are non-destructive testing, quality, welding, procedures. All TransTech offers training certification as well as shop surveillance reporting. Fleet assessments, evaluating your fleet to ensure that you have the right car, fittings, types, coatings, etc. for service as well as the right number of cars. Inspection and test data assessments. As you are receiving the inspection and test certs, you are going to want to review them for accuracy as well as later reporting. Asset performance reports, fleet utilization and spend evaluation by fleet cost, center, business unit, handling of planned and incidental maintenance. Program management, how will you maintain when and what a railcar requires? Is the program year interval, mileage interval, one-time due? Root cause analysis. Let's think about NRAs. You really want to stay on top of these. Getting to the bottom and planning corrective action is key. Why was there a release? What can be corrected to prevent this in the future? And of course, implementation of a corrective action. Considerations for the future, good practices and teamwork. What's your repair network? Who are the vendors you rely upon to repair your cars? Have you made your needs and expectations clear to the vendors? Consider working on verbal or written capacity agreements with your repair vendors. And then make sure you hold up your end of the bargain. There's nothing worse than making a reservation at a place and then you don't show. So that particular place is on the line. The shops are going to get mad at you and no longer handle that. So please make sure that you do hold up your end of the bargain. For shippers and owners of tank cars, are you already thinking about upcoming requalification bubbles? Planning proactively? Are you making the rail cars the path of least resistance for repair vendors? Are you providing detailed information, drawings, instructions, authorizations prior to the car arriving? Are you collaborating with the repair vendor to prioritize your rail cars? Are you offering approvals in a timely manner? And are you paying their invoices? I'm going to talk about tank car ownership for a little bit. And where this comes into play is HM216B, which came out a couple of years ago. It's a replacement for HM201, which was previously initiated back in 1997 and had to do with the qualification of tank cars. Probably the most significant change was that it enforces rules that tank car owners should have been following all along. Previously, tank car owners were not following and performing all mandatory items, rather simply performing the bare minimum. The FRA came in and basically said, no more. If you do not do what we say, we are going to start penalizing your fleet as well as stopping your rail cars through interchange. So HM216B, qualifications. It's basically 5 elements, and I have 6 of them listed here. The third one has an asterisk at the end because it's a bit peripheral. as it's tied to the workflow. So maintenance and qualification procedures, you're going to have those. RCM, maintenance and qualification, and I'll speak to that in a little bit. Data collection. The whole intent of this is to be able to handle something before it becomes a problem, proactive instead of reactive. Tank car integrated database, TKID, this is with the asterisk. This is not a part of HM216B, however, it is a data collection requirement. Up until a few years ago, there was mandatory reporting for tank alterations and conversions, tank damage, and stub sill inspection. This has now been replaced by TKID, which is part of Railing. All TransTech lists this as part of the qualification program because if a railcar is being qualified, essentially this reporting must be submitted. You want to think about data. You want to think about record keeping. How are you going to keep track of all of this, these test certificates and the findings? As mentioned a moment ago, ShopWatch. All TransTech offers a program called ShopWatch, basically a shop surveillance, a supplier assessment. So you do want to make sure that those shops are qualified to do the work that you are hiring them for, as well as carrying it out. It is a snapshot in time, obviously. We go there, or if somebody else may do your shop surveillance, you go there. The minute we leave, they could fire all their employees. Things could change. But it is a good baseline for you. Qualification and interval analysis. This is the mathematical part of testing. Taking the data and turning it into information. Basically taking the data that you have collected and being able to support the testing intervals which you have in your maintenance and qualification procedures. What you are seeing here is a diagram, which is actually from the presentation the FRA uses, which we're pretty proud of due to the fact that it is our diagram and our data. What you are looking at is the y-axis is time. I'm sorry, the x-axis is time. The y-axis is reliability. And what you're seeing is that things are looking pretty good up to a point, and then they drop off quickly. So basically take your data, apply a curve like this to it, and then make a determination with a certain degree of confidence that you will get this car into shop and have it inspected prior to predicted failure. I also want to mention that even if you do not own your rail cars, you may have responsibility to handle testing of linings, certain things like if your car goes to a shop and then returns to you, you do not necessarily want this move to be oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. Determine or service equipment, I'm sorry. So please review this with your lessor. Otherwise, full service lease cars are covered under owner qualification plan. Other responsibilities. Ad valorem taxes. We put together a map. What you are seeing is that anything in green does not have a tax. Yellow has relatively low taxes compared to the ones in red. Red, you're going to pay about $1 a day for each day the rail car sits. Taxes can be assessed based upon transit time. How fast are your rail cars moving? Ad valorem taxes are property tax. So in addition to state, there are other taxing bodies at the county level, school districts, Native American reservations, and a handful of others. If your rail car moves through these areas or sits in these areas, they can tax you for it. Similar to income tax, you need to file taxes once a year based upon where your rail cars moved or were being loaded or located during the previous year. You will file the various taxing bodies. They will come back and advise they agree or they do not. You are over or under claiming, and you will address accordingly. You will really need a system to help you keep track of all of this. Be proactive and file ahead of due dates. You do not want to file late. We have seen some pretty hefty penalties when filing late. All TransTech does have a tax department here to assist you. Auditing of running repairs. Railroad billing is not without error. Audits at multiple levels are needed and a claim process. Lease auditing. Lease bill auditing. You want to monitor for out-of-service credits. If your lease has and your riders have excess mileage penalties, you want to monitor that to make sure that you are not overcharged. You want to keep track of renewals, termination date tracking, and planning. Mileage equalization. It's important to watch your exposure on this. There is something called a 106 rule. If your rail cars move more than 6% empty, then loaded, you could be subject to penalizations. In Canada, both tank and hopper cars are subject. In the US, only tank cars. You really need to stay on top of this. And if your rail cars are moving more empty than loaded, you do want to determine why. There are opportunities for relief. Certain things like if a rail car goes to shop and then returns to you, you do not necessarily want to move to be counted as an empty rail car if the rail car was moving for mandatory testing. You want to keep track of your routes that your rail cars are taking. Loaded moves in a straight line, point A to point B. Sometimes railroads like to take scenic routes on the empty returns. This is called circuitous routing, which will cause your empty miles to increase. So you want to keep track of that and stay ahead of that. This is an opportunity to save quite a bit of money. Repair spend monitoring. Keep track of where your money is going. As a fleet manager, you want to be able to categorize where your spend is. This can be done relatively easily by grouping job codes into categories. Think about budgeting your spending through dashboard and trend analysis. Relatively easily done. It's based upon a grouping of job codes into the various categories. Also keep in mind that if you bring rail cars in for early testing, that does not mean that your intervals change. As an example, 10-year interval mandatory testing. Cars do testing in 2023, brought in proactively in 2022, and completed will be due in 2032, not 2033. Document management. Access to your documents internally and externally is critical. Security and controls are important. Redundancy, disaster recovery, retention policies, and legal hold policies. Relational indexing of documents provides benefits. So think about that. You want to be able to access your documents quickly from anywhere, store them, index them, maybe by car, maybe by test certificate, items such as that. It's very important. Industry regulations. You definitely want to stay on top of this. You want to monitor the circular letters. You want to monitor the circular AAR summaries. You want to stay involved. So some of the ways to do that would be by attending tank car committee meetings, tags, industry task force, consortiums. Any way to stay on top of that, to be informed, to think about things. So what you're seeing on the left side of this particular slide is All TransTech offers for our Stencil Watch customers a summary. Our engineers review all of the AAR circulars, summarize that, and we actually provide it to our customers nice, neat, organized. And you can see on the right side of the template, we actually say who it's going to impact. So in some cases, it could be none, but you do want to stay aware of it, and it's informed, and you want to stay on top of that. So opportunities, the good, the bad. When managing a railcar fleet, the most important tools are your system and your people. Potential fees and penalties are everywhere. Opportunities for efficiencies and savings are everywhere. Ability to monitor, forecast, and react make all of the difference. Being well informed is always a good plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Allison. That was a great presentation, very informative. So we did have a couple questions come in. All right, first question. Have others within the industry been struggling with the 4-2 approval process required of tank car owners?
Hey everybody,
So,
this is Jay Kreska, and thanks Allison as well, and thanks Chris. That's a good question. The answer, in my experience and our experience, is yes. If you don't know what that question is asking, it is the process in which tank car owners have to apply for any alterations made to their tank cars if it does not match the way the tank cars were built, or if it does not match an existing drawing and 4-2 or certificate of construction that you have on file. This process has become more complicated. It gets especially complicated if your fleet is pretty segmented between different certificates of construction. If you're lucky enough to have a relatively small fleet and it might be built one of two ways, that's great for you. Others have purchased some cars on the secondary market, and you might have a group of 10 cars built 10 different ways. So obviously this problem kind of gets exacerbated the more cars you have in your fleet and the more kinds of alterations you need to make. So I think everybody currently is doing it a little bit differently, but to say this is how my car was built and this is how I need it to build currently is a pretty laborious process to get the approval back from the AAR. So if you are struggling with this, you are not alone. And yes, this is very common. In fact, I think it's more common that people struggle with it than anybody who has it really nailed down at this point.
great. Thank you, Jay. I think that answered it very thoroughly. If anyone has any other follow-ups on that, please type them in the question pane. We got a few more questions coming in here. When is the deadline to file taxes?
I'm going to have to defer to Allison if you have it memorized. I don't have it memorized.
Actually, Jay is, or I'm sorry, Chris is going to take that
I can
question.
actually answer that one. So the deadline varies state by state, and we actually have a nice graphic on our LinkedIn page within our posts that detail each state when the deadline to file taxes is. So if you guys want to go to our LinkedIn or our Twitter or Facebook, it is the graphic is on there. Additionally, feel free to reach out to me. There's a contact page on the website, and if you need it, if you want me to send it to you, I will gladly send it over. Just contact us. We very nicely put it in the calendar, each state's deadline. All right, we got a few more questions coming in here. Do you offer these fleet services a la carte or a monthly subscription rate?
So fleet management, the bulk of what I've shown you here today, we do offer at a per car per month rate. As far as some of inspection, engineering work, that would be a la carte, typically ad hoc. We'll write it into the contract, and only if you turn it on will you be charged.
Thank you, Allison. For 4-2, does all TransTech provide the service of piggybacking on already approved designs for quick use?
If we have access to a precedent drawing, yes, we would take advantage of that. Now, from our perspective, when we think about our fleet, it's really not our fleet, it's our customer's fleet. So if customer A has put engineering time and money into a drawing, might not necessarily want us to share it with customer B. However, we have had customers who we have approached before and said, you've spent this amount of money, you both have cars that were built in a similar way. Customer B is willing to reimburse you for use of this drawing. Would you be open to that? And those situations have sometimes, panned out. So we would take advantage of that any chance we can. And that would include if you purchased cars from a car builder, let's say you bought cars from Trinity, we could approach Trinity and say, you built these cars, you might have needed an alteration, or one of your customers has needed this alteration previously. Have you already gone down this path? And if so, would this customer of yours be able to use your precedent drawing to do the same modification. So yes, we would take advantage of that if at all possible.
Great. Thank you, Jay. A few more questions coming in here. If it is not mandatory, what are the benefits of registering in ORER?
That's totally up to you. It is not mandatory any longer. Find Us is mandatory. It's up to you. If you want your rail cars, your equipment published on paper, that would be the only benefit that I can see.
Great. Thank you, Allison. How can we find the depreciated value of our rail cars?
All right. So depreciated value, it's basically fluctuates every single month. Quarterly, annually, the AAR comes out with a cost factor, which is published, and then based upon your rail cars and the year that they were built, the month that they were built, and the bottom line ledger value, your cars will fluctuate depreciated value. So really, one of the ways, there are two ways to do it. If you have a rail car that is damaged through interchange, Rail-Link's DDCT system will ask you to provide it, and they have a tool for that is done one rail car at a time, or you will need to review the office manual and look at the rules, apply those rules, and you're going to have to do it, unfortunately, one rail car at a time, or if you have a build and every car was built at the same time. That's the only way to do it that I'm aware of. And then just be aware that it will change monthly.
Thank you, Allison. What is a good way to extract BRC data from an invoice?
So as I mentioned, you're going to want a system. The industry standard for collection, reporting of BRC data is standard AAR 500 by data. That is how the railroads report to Rail-Link. You need a system to pull it down from Rail-Link. Shops will report the same way. The best way to extract it on an invoice is to have a system which will convert that to possibly an analytical tool or Excel. But bottom line, you're going to need a system.
Great. I got another question here. I have heard of there being OTMAs. I have heard of there being OTMAs required of non-hazardous hopper cars. Is this true?
Yes, this can be true. So typically, if you know what an OTMA is, it's a one-time movement approval, and most of the time when you hear the phrase OTMA, it is coming from the hazardous material group within the FRA. There is another group in the FRA called the MP&E group, which is the Motive Power and Equipment group. They will sometimes also require an OTMA. It's a little bit different. It's not really an OTMA 1, 2, or 3. And this is typically on cars that are, I would say, structurally damaged and attempting to move through interchange. So it is a rarity, but at times when there is a car that is heavily damaged and not moving on a flat car, you may need an OTMA from the MP&E group. And if it's the right kind of car, you may need both an OTMA from MP&E and the hazardous materials group.
Thanks, Jay. All right, we got more questions coming in. This is fantastic. Are the benefits of doing an equalization audit substantial?
Oh boy, yes. Yes. I kind of wish I had our director of railcar auditing on the line with us. But you're talking millions. So yes, it is very beneficial. We actually, as I said, we have a car accounting group in Houston that heads up this for us. What we do, what we offer to our customers is we can collect your mileage via Rail-Link for your own cars, lessors. We can do it basically from the lessors for free. We can monitor that, provide monthly reports on that. Your equalization is going to fluctuate as the year goes as we get further into the year. Your final mileage being reported essentially in March after the prior year. So it could be that you're running more empty miles at the beginning of the year, but maybe at the end of the year you're running more loaded. So what we'll do is we will review that, monitor it, in some cases contact your lessors and say, hey, it looks like, company A has run a bunch of empty miles. We want to know whether you are going to penalize them. Now, equalization is based upon a parent mark. So a lessor could have one parent mark, but 100 lessors. So they have to group all of that together. So companies B through Z could be running tons of loaded miles. So company A that we were concerned about will not be penalized. Our car accounting group actually proactively goes out to railroads and asks the same questions. We would look at trips, storage, testing, and help you reduce that. So bottom line, is there a benefit? If you have a large fleet, if you are moving your cars empty, moving into storage, something like that, this is a huge benefit.
Thank you very much, Allison. All right, we got another question here. And I can field this unless, Jay, unless you got this. What is the ad valorem tax rate in a higher tax state like Texas compared to a lower tax state such as Illinois? So unless do you have an answer for that, Jay? If not, I can, kind of cover it.
No, go for it.
Or Allison. Oh,
Yeah,
Allison,
no, I was going to say Illinois is a green state. And I mentioned that earlier. So amazingly enough, I don't know how many people on the line live in Illinois, but Illinois does not tax on rail cars. But a state like California, that was red, and it is $1 per day.
Yeah, so, it is taxed highly in other states, Texas being one of them. Texas is an interesting state. They do tax rail cars differently, and we can, for whoever asked that, I have your information here. I can put you in contact with our manager of tax and audit services to kind of give you an overview of that if you would like. So, but yeah, no, it is much higher than Illinois.
Yeah.
All right, so that, all right, we have a few questions along the same line. Will you be providing the slide deck, and will there be a replay of this presentation available? The answer is yes. Both of those will be available on our website in a few days. So on our website, there is a resources section, and in there you'll find past webinars. We will be posting that there in the next few days. We got another question. Why do some states charge tax and others do not?
Boy, you know what? I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Unless Jay has that, I
Yeah.
don't know offhand either, but
We
again,
do, yeah.
that might be a better question I can.
For our tax department.
For our tax department. So I have your information here as well, and I'm going to ask them, and I'll reach back out to you with the answer to that. All right. Unless another question comes in here in the next couple minutes, thank you everyone for attending. I hope you found it beneficial. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Jay, for the presentation and answering the questions. We will be having another webinar announcement for our next webinar in the All Transtech webinar series on April 6th. So keep a lookout for that. It'll be sent out via email as well as on all our forms of social media. So keep a lookout for that. And, while I was saying that, another question came in, a very good one. What is the requalification bubble?
Oh, okay. So, we have trends in the industry, builds, booming years with builds, they go up and down. So the requalification bubble for the industry would be looking at those bubbles when cars were built where it was a big build year, and all of those cars are going to come due. As a fleet manager, what you need to do is probably just look at your fleet. If you're leasing cars, you might want to look at your riders. Are you leasing cars that are all in the same series, all on the same build? They're probably all going to come due at the same time. So you want to budget for that. So that's what a requalification bubble is.
And if I can just jump in on that, I think you would take a look at your fleet, leased or owned, and look at the year that most of your cars are due, and you might find it, if you have cars, let's say in 2025, 2026, you might find that you have a high number of cars, and I would say you can bet on a lot of other people having a high number of cars due in those same years. So if you have cars currently in shop, it's pretty common for tank car owners. If you have a car going to shop for an unrelated reason, you didn't send it there for requalification, but it is there for another reason, and it's due within 2 years, it could be common for you to, at that time, requalify the car to prevent another trip to a shop in the next 2 years. So just take a look at your fleet and consider if you want to accelerate any of the cars that you see due over the next few years to help spread it out a little bit. And just, I guess, consider, if you look at your turn times and you say, I already can't tolerate this many cars out of service for this long, consider those turn times might be longer in a couple of years because there will be far more cars all being due for the same thing. This could even affect people who don't own or ship in tank cars, because if you're sending your cars to the kind of shops that also do tank work, they may be inundated by tank car requalification work during the next couple of years. So this, again, one of the slides Allison had mentioned, partnering with your repair vendors. This is something you'd like to get your foot in the door. You don't want to be, if they have 10 customers that are important to them and you're their least favorite, and if you've noticed in the industry, this will sometimes shift. There are times when repair vendors need work. There are times when there is far more work than the industry has repair space. So that's another reason why you want to make your cars the path of least resistance. You want to be a partner with these repair vendors so that when they're picking and choosing which cars they can afford to take, your cars are the ones they pick. And then you have to work on getting them prioritized if at all possible. So just keep an eye out for what you can see do in your fleet over the next year. A lot of people like to defer maintenance, but consider if it's worth it to accelerate maintenance if you can afford it, to prevent your cars from being locked up during a year where everybody is trying to shop their cars.
Great, Jay, thank you. We got more questions coming in, which is great. Someone may have more of a comment. Let's not forget the extra qualifications required by an accelerated program. All right, got another question. Have you heard about any mobile providers being able to perform HM216 to help combat the industry bubble in 2023 through 2026?
I have heard of some facilities entertaining the idea, and there are some facilities who can do parts of this. So could a repair facility be set up to requalify service equipment? I think probably that's not quite a stretch because they may already have the certifications needed to rebuild service equipment and do all the valves on the car. They could probably do the Rule 88. They may be able to do the SS3, but these all require certification. So which of these mobile crews have maintained, or these certifications are not cheap. So who has maintained these or is going to maintain these for the next few years to attempt this is a good question. I think a lot of mobile crews are, looking at the idea and seeing if it's worth it for them to attempt. So I've definitely heard about it, and there are, like I said, there are already crews who can do partial requalifications. If you have something like a car you expect to be lined or painted, this may not work for you because you're going to find yourself sending it to a full service shop that's congested anyways. But yes, I think there are repair vendors out there that are already able to do most requalification items on a car. If the car gets simpler, no lining, no paint, pretty, vanilla requalification, you could probably partner with a crew to have these things done on your site or at their site if they have a fast track or a storage location that they partner with.
Thanks, Jay. You got a few more coming in here. Is there an industry rule about the time frame that due programs can be pulled forward?
Do programs can be pulled forward. So if you have a car with 10-year interval stencil on it today and you want to pull it forward to 8 years proactively, if I understand that question correctly, I don't know the answer to that. I think that would be less, if I understand the question, I think that would be less of an issue than the opposite, obviously, which would say, well, we thought it was 10 years, but we can go 12, which is a bad example, but just forgive me for that. I would have to get back to you on that question. You have to, all of the changes would have to be in sync. So let's say you have a data set that says, I want to actually requalify my cars a little earlier based on the findings on the first sample set. You would have to change the source document that says, hey, I shipped this product in this car. I originally thought it would last 10 years. I'm more comfortable at 8 or 5. You'd have to change that document. You would have to change the cars. And then I think the question would be what the station stencil would be on from the crew who changed the date. But I'm probably a bit over my skis on answering that question. So I think I might want to consult with some of our engineering and compliance people, and we could get you a better answer.
Right, and the only comment I have about that is perhaps the question may have been as simple as is there any industry standard for bringing your cars in early due to the requalification bubble? So if that was the intention of the question, if you own the tank cars, they're yours. You own them. Bring them in early. You say what that rule will be. As far as full service lease tank cars, that's really going to be a lessor decision. So I don't think there's a rule per se, but you do want to keep in mind budgeting because you're just going to pay early. I did want to comment really quick on back on a previous question, EQ. I did get feedback that there is a $5 savings per dollar spend on an EQ audit. So if you are running more empty, if your equalization penalties look like they're climbing and of concern, please keep that in mind. $5 savings per $1 spend on EQ audit.
Thank you very much. I think that this might be one of the last questions we got coming in here. Does All Trans Tech provide complete railcar support?
That is a big yes. Everything that I talked about during the presentation, All Trans Tech offers. So cradle to grave, well, we can help you with your inspections, with your building of cars, with railcar taxes, with railcar auditing, with a system to track and trace. We partner with companies that provide that support for track and trace, but everything else is in-house. So we do hire people with these specific skill sets, and yes, it is a full cradle to grave.
Thank you, Allison. And that is the last question I see here. So again, to wrap it up, great presentation. Thank both of you for giving your time. Thank everyone for attending. This will be available within a few days on our website, alltranstech.com. In the resources section, there's a webinar tab there. You'll be able to find it. And hope you guys have a great rest of your day and rest of the week. Thank you very much. Bye.